Good afternoon and welcome to the Midday News. Here's what we have in the bulletin. Psychological evaluation to be done on man seen in viral in Catherine. JTA hopeful for resumption of face-to-face classes in sports. More changes expected to Reggae Boy squad ahead of World Cup qualifiers. I'm Giovanni Dennis and here are the details. The man who was yesterday arrested for abusing his adult son at their home on Marchpen Road in Spanish Town, St. Catherine, remains in hospital under observation. The police say they are trying to determine the mental state of the 69-year-old man. He's also being treated for injuries he received at the hands of his neighbors as they sought to have him arrested. Residents claim the man has been a menace in the community. They also claim his son was being prevented from getting treatment from the state. In the video, which went viral on social media, the man is seen beating his son, who is tied by his neck to a grill. The Jamaica Teachers Association, JTA, is hopeful that face-to-face classes will resume for high school students this month. But at the same time, the Jamaica Association of Principals of Secondary Schools says it is unlikely that students will be able to return to physical classes anytime soon. The Education Ministry says schools could return to a hybrid approach for classes come October 14, which would incorporate face-to-face. O'Shane Masters has the details.
More than 18 months without physical interaction, the plight of a nation's children. It has come with numerous challenges, including no device or limited or no access to the internet. Now the level of vaccination among students is another challenge. The Health Ministry earlier this year said that students would be offered the Pfizer vaccine in a bid to have face-to-face classes resume. However, that brand of vaccine has depleted. About 200,000 doses of a Pfizer vaccine are expected to arrive in the island this month. President of the Jamaica Association of Principals of Secondary Schools, Linford Wright, says a mid-October resumption of face-to-face classes is highly unlikely.
The mid-October start in relation to vaccinations. If it is that we're going to vaccinate 65%, that seems to be off right now. Until we know definitively when we're going to be getting the vaccine, we are concerned what is happening. Because what we really would want as principals is for those persons who we can have the kind of drive to have people take the vaccines, and we have enough persons taking the vaccines, and we meet the threshold and have school, because the online learning really is a challenge.
The JTA President, Winston Smith, is however hopeful.
When I reach in office today, I'm intending to have a meeting, have dialogue with the ministry to find out what are the things that are being done and how things are looking for up. But we are hopeful that a face-to-face resumption can take place as soon as possible. And if October 14th, as the date schedule, is feasible, then we'll be very happy for that. So we're pretty much waiting on clearance from the Ministry of Health and Wellness.
The Education Ministry earlier this year had set a vaccination target of 65% for each school in a bid to have face-to-face classes resume. O'Shane Masters, TVJ News.
Meanwhile, the JTA has responded to concerns that the first shipment of the Pfizer vaccine should have been solely prioritized for students.
If we hold on to it and say we're going to give all the students and then we don't get a full take-up of the students, we end up with a situation like what we have recently with vaccine has to be dumped, and that doesn't make sense. So therefore, make it available. Yes, we understand and we hope that students will take it up, but remember, students are not able to act on their own. They need their parental involvement and support of the thing. Now, if the parents are not coming through, then you would want to deprive teachers and caregivers, janitors, watchmen, and so forth, the opportunity of getting the vaccine, as well as other parents who may want to take it, because if we do not obtain the number, the percentage per se for school, and if we can get the number that we can have herd immunity, as it is said, then whichever one works for us, we should go.
To other news, the Cornwall Regional Hospital in St. James is still struggling with bed capacity issues as the island continues to battle the third wave of the COVID-19 pandemic. The issue was discussed on the morning agenda on Power 106.
Data from the Health Ministry reveal that cases of COVID-19 across the island continue to trend downward. But the crisis out west, in particular at the Cornwall Regional Hospital in Montego Bay, St. James, is far from over. There have been complaints about long waiting hours at the facility. Clinical coordinator at the hospital, Dr. Delroy Frey, says the pandemic has pushed the facility to extreme measures.
If you come to Cornwall Hospital with a gunshot wound, that is an emergency. And if you're sitting there waiting, let's say for a fracture risk, the gunshot must take priority over the fracture risk. So you might have to wait when the surgeon needs to go to operating theater and operate for 6 hours. Those are the dynamics that we have to work with.
The hospital is also being criticized for the lack of sufficient beds to treat COVID-19 patients. A doctor at the facility has since labeled the situation as inhumane. Again, Dr. Frey is insisting that the healthcare workers are stretched thin due to the pandemic.
I'm not going to refute what he says. What I'm saying to you, Sanjay, is that we have to do the best with what we have. We don't have the physical facility, as you know. We have moved out into refurbished areas working. And that is the bottom line of the problem.
According to data from the ministry, 340 Jamaicans died from the virus between September 1 and Saturday, October 2. In the meantime, Dr. Frey was asked to comment on the status of the morgue at the Cornwall Regional Hospital.
So as it now stands, you don't have excess bodies in the morgue located at Cornwall Regional?
No, I couldn't answer that because I wouldn't know how many are there. But as I said, if there's an overflow, there's a private morgue facility that accommodates us.
O'Shane Masters, TVJ News.
Despite more than 1 billion COVID-19 vaccine doses administered in Latin America and the Caribbean, the Pan American Health Organization, PAHO, says this is not enough. Director of PAHO, Dr. Carissa Etienne, says only 35% of people in Latin America and the Caribbean are fully vaccinated. But she says the coverage is not uniformed.
Chile, Uruguay, and Puerto Rico have fully vaccinated over 70% of their populations. 10 countries and territories in our region have yet to reach 20% of their populations. And in Haiti, fewer than 1% of people have been protected thus far. Most countries continue to have limited access to vaccines.
However, Dr. Etienne says she is encouraged by the announcement made at the recently concluded Global COVID-19 Summit. She said world leaders pledged to give an additional 850 million COVID vaccine doses.
The States itself will donate an additional 500 million vaccines to low and lower middle income countries, bringing the total U.S. donations to over 1.1 billion doses. At that summit, I told participants that overcoming this pandemic rests on having the tools to prevent, detect, and treat COVID-19.
The country's COVID-19 positivity rate has declined. On Sunday, Jamaica recorded a 15.8% positivity rate, down from Saturday's 19%. 213 new COVID-19 cases were reported in the last 24 hours, increasing the overall case count to 84,914. Meanwhile, 13 more people have died from the virus. The death toll now stands at 1,922. One death is under investigation. 571 people are hospitalized with the respiratory illness. 35 patients are critically ill, while 78 are severely ill. 157 people have recovered from COVID-19, pushing the recovery count to 53,404. There are 29,006 active cases on the island. And it's now time for a break. Please stay with us. We'll have much more when you return. Welcome back. We're continuing the news. A parish court judge has given the management of our hotel in New Kingston until tomorrow, Tuesday, to hand over closed-circuit television or CCTV footage relating to the party former Agriculture Minister Floyd Green attended last month on a no-movement day. The order was handed down on Friday when lawyers for the Police High Command and the hotel went to court. Sandy Williams has the details.
TVJ News was informed that the judge stayed the order after the attorney for the hotel requested that the police tell his client in what format they want the video footage. The Jamaica Constabulary Force requested time to consult with its cybercrime experts. The R Hotel was given 5 days within which to provide the footage to the cops, who are investigating whether Mr. Green and the other individuals at the party should be charged with breaches of the Disaster Risk Management Act. The hotel's attorney, Peter Champagny, told TVJ News that his client is prepared to cooperate with the police in the investigation. Mr. Green resigned as minister on September 15 after a video was circulated on social media showing at least 13 people closely gathered at the party without face masks. Last week, Deputy Commissioner in charge of crime, Fitz Bailey, said the police might not be able to bring charges against Mr. Green because of recent changes to the Disaster Risk Management Act. DCP Bailey said an amendment made to the law on August 11 gives unconditional exemption for certain categories of people. Sandy Williams, TVJ News.
Factories Corporation of Jamaica is defending its decision to lock out a businessman from a property in Hague, Trelawney. As O'Shane Masters reports, the businessman is seeking the Prime Minister's intervention even though the FCJ has leased the property to a third party.
Last Tuesday, when businessman Gordon Baldy arrived at the warehouse he had leased from the state-owned Factories Corporation of Jamaica, FCJ, he was greeted with changed locks on the grills and his goods valued more than $27 million missing. The property was leased to Mr. Baldy in 2015 under a 5-year contract at a monthly rate of $810,000.
I have been financing this business out of my pocket since 2016. I have done extensive repair. This building was abandoned and fell in disrepair for 14 years prior to me taking it over. I took it over and I had to do a massive renovation.
A release from FCJ's attorney Don Cox states that it was agreed that Cars to Go Limited, the company operated by Mr. Baldy, would pay no rental for the first 2 years of the lease in order to recoup the sums paid in improving the premises. Cars to Go Limited was to commence paying rent effective February 1, 2017, which it did. But in 2018, the company fell into arrears for rent and maintenance.
I've done everything in my contract with them to date, and I fell on hard times. I owe them about 8 months of lease. The lease currently I'm paying 810,000 Jamaican dollar, and the truth is, I have fallen on hard times. I've been doing this business out of my pocket. I've tried to get financing. I have to date no financing locally has come to my rescue.
The release states that a letter dated July 13, 2021 was issued by FCJ providing the opportunity for the goods left on its premises to be removed, subject to proof of ownership by July 22, 2021, and that a notification was given that if the goods were not removed, they would be deemed abandoned and disposed of. However, FCJ says no response was received to the letter. FCJ says another letter dated August 3, 2021 was issued which stated that it will lease the premises to a third party within 20 days of the date of the letter. Again, FCJ says no response was received. The goods were therefore removed and relocated at the corporation's cost, where they are currently in storage and available for collection, subject to proof of ownership. FCJ has now leased the premises to a third party in order to mitigate its losses for the period that no rental income was earned from Cars to Go Limited.
My heart is heavy, my eyes are teary, I am so heartbroken. Prime Minister, I'm a young man. I've spent all my monies in this factory, my own money. I've spent my own money plus I've indebted myself millions of dollars from banks trying to get this project. I need some assistance, Prime Minister. Honorable Prime Minister.
O'Shane Masters, TVJ News.
A Jamaican and an Antiguan who are victims of the Windrush scandal have launched legal proceedings against the UK Home Office over protracted delays in issuing compensation. The two men are asking for clarity on how claims can be expedited. According to the Guardian newspaper, 67-year-old Henry Vaughan, who was born in Jamaica, and 55-year-old Antiguan Fitzroy Maynard are struggling financially while living in unsuitable accommodation. The men say they are unable to begin rebuilding their lives after years of problems caused by the British government's decision to classify them as illegal immigrants. Kimon Witter has the details.
The Guardian says Mr. Vaughan, who arrived in the UK from Jamaica in 1961 to join his mother, who was working in a London hospital, had decades of difficulties proving that he was in the UK legally, and the cumulative stress has triggered serious health problems. Mr. Maynard went to the UK as a 14-year-old from Antigua in 1980. Both were given documentation by the Windrush Task Force after the government apologized in 2018 for erroneously classifying thousands of legal residents as illegal immigrants. However, Mr. Vaughan and Mr. Maynard have experienced long delays after applying for compensation. The judicial review launched by the London law firm Lay on the men's behalf is calling for the Home Office to publish guidance on its expedition process for claims under the Windrush compensation scheme. The legal team discovered that there is an internal system under which urgent cases can be expedited, but there is no public information about how to apply for claims to be fast-tracked. The lawyers argued that the system of prioritization needs to be made clear so that those in acute need, such as elderly and disabled people, can apply for expedition.
The Wandon gang trial failed to get underway in the Home Circuit Court this morning after the court was told that two of the absent defendants are awaiting their COVID-19 results. When the matter was called up, the court was told that the test results for Andre Golding and Owen Ormsby, who are being held at a lockup in St. Catherine, should be available by tomorrow. Chief Justice Brian Sykes complained that 18 months into the pandemic, he was hoping that all police stations would have been retrofitted with the technology to connect the court via video link. He said only one facility in St. Catherine has such technology. Justice Sykes said he will be pressing the police to have all police stations retrofitted. He said this is the 21st century and remote hearings will continue after the pandemic. And it's now time for the Business Minute.
Global food prices shot up nearly 33% in September compared with the same period last year. That's according to the UN Food and Agriculture Organization FAO's monthly food price index. It shows global prices at a 10-year high. The food price index is designed to capture the combined outcome of changes in a range of food commodities, including vegetable oils, cereals, meat, and sugar, and compare them month to month. Victoria Wealth Management has raised $2.5 billion for its parent company Victoria Mutual Investments via an 18-month bond issue. The bond has a 5.5% interest rate. The funds will help Victoria Mutual Investments expand in small and medium-sized enterprises and other asset classes. JetBlue Airlines employees will have to be vaccinated if they want to keep their jobs. JetBlue says it will, quote, fully comply with the federal vaccine mandate for federal contractors. However, no word on when the requirement goes into effect. American Airlines made a similar statement on Friday.
Now for the top regional and international stories with Sandy Williams.
The Joe Biden administration has announced new immigration enforcement priorities amid the Haitian migration crisis. The U.S. Secretary of Homeland Security says the new guidelines for the enforcement of civil immigration law aims to better focus the department's resources on the apprehension and removal of non-citizens. A major oil spill is threatening wetlands and wildlife off the coast of Southern California. 126,000 gallons of oil gushed into the Pacific Ocean after a pipeline leak was discovered on Saturday. The leak appears to have stopped, but divers have been inspecting a stretch of pipeline, hoping to find the exact source of the spill. U.S. Coast Guard officials say more than 3,100 gallons of oil have been recovered from the water so far. In the meantime, health officials on Sunday also said they would issue an advisory, especially for people with respiratory illnesses, warning that the products evaporating from the oil spill could also create irritation for the eyes, nose, and throat, potentially even vomiting or dizziness. And that's it for the top regional and international stories. I'm Sandy Williams.
And we now head to a quick break. When we come back, Simon Preston will have the Midday Sports.
Welcome back. It's now time for Midday Sports. I'm Simon Preston. TVJ Sports understands that Reggae Boys defender Ethan Pinnock will not be travelling for the upcoming World Cup qualifiers against the United States, Canada and Honduras. It's understood that Pinnock picked up a knock recently for Brentford in the English Premier League. Towering central defender Jamoy Topi of Cavalier SC is expected to replace Pinnock in the squad. The 21-year-old's last appearance for Jamaica came at the 2019 edition of the CONCACAF Gold Cup. Meanwhile, another defender, Liam Moore, will face a fitness test to see if he can depart England for international duty. Liam Moore returned to competitive football over the weekend with Reading in a 1-0 win over Cardiff City. The local contingent of the Reggae Boys delegation departed the island this morning. The Jamaicans will open the October window of international football away to the United States on October 7, before hosting Canada on October 10, and then they will travel to San Pedro Sula to face Honduras on October 13. Reggae Boys captain Andre Blake saved a penalty and kept a clean stadium on October 10 after facing the United States away on October 7. The Jamaicans have won 7, lost 9 and drawn 6 games against Canada. And that is it for your Midday Sports Report. I'm Simon Preston. Giovanni, it is over to you.
Thanks, Simon, and that's it indeed for the Midday News. I'm Giovanni Dennis. Join us at 7 for Primetime News. On behalf of the news, sports and production teams, have a good afternoon.